So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Jeremy Hunt getting kind of grilled on the budget and the kind of pitiful 11p tax cut for real ale. What an absolute joke this man is. What a jobber, honestly.
It's nearly 7 years now, and I want to change subjects, since we voted for Brexit. And people have argued about what the benefits are. And finally we found out yesterday, it's real ale. I mean, isn't that rather embarrassing, almost pathetic, that that's what we can point to? Look, we can set our own tariffs for real ale in pubs.
Well,
it's an 11p tax cut, as far as I'm aware.
John, look, I know you've never been a supporter of Brexit.
I've never made any comment one way or other.
I can see it from your tweets and the tone of your comments. And by the way, that is fine.
Oh, by the way, you agree?
No, I think we can make a great success. I did vote Remain, but I do believe we can make a great success of Brexit. And as you've asked the question...
So in the context of this interview, he voted Remain. So when he says, he mentions in the interview that, I think we could be a great independent nation. Clearly you didn't. Clearly you didn't. You had doubts, because otherwise you'd have voted for Brexit.
I have never doubted that we can be successful as an independent country in the way that Canada or Australia can be. And
we're bigger than both those countries economically.
The important thing that I said yesterday, the differential tariff for draft beer is something that does actually matter to pubs, who are a great British institution, very important for our communities. But that's not the big thing.
That's the best thing you had. I mean, what's more important for pubs? Being able to actually get staff and to get the shipments that they want from the EU, to get the supplies that they need, especially the imported stuff, the imported beers and wines and spirits, all the stuff you can only get from the continent, or an 11p tax cut for real British ale. Which one would be more beneficial, I wonder?
The big thing is that what people voted for in 2016, what many people voted for, they voted for a variety of different reasons, is they wanted an economic model that is not dependent on unlimited low-skilled migration.
We didn't have unlimited low-skilled migration. There's a limit in it. There's a limit because only a certain amount of people can get here. People got angry because of, quote, low-skilled immigration. But when you look at the system we have now, we need more immigration, be it lower skilled or higher skilled, however you define it. We need more people to come in because there's a massive record amount of vacancies. That's the problem, and we don't have the people or the expertise to fill it.
Which was possible when we were in the single market. And what I was doing yesterday was saying, how do we change that model? We've got 1 million vacancies in businesses up and down the country. And if we, for example, had the same employment levels as Holland, a country that's in the EU, not dissimilar to us culturally, we would have more than 2.7 million people in work. So we would fill those vacancies nearly 3 times over.
But look
and
at
that's
that
why
economic...
That's stupid, because the problem is, just because you have enough people to fill the vacancies, it doesn't mean you can fill the vacancies. You still have geography to contend with. Jeremy Hunt, now kind of a Brexiter, maybe by being a Brexiter you don't understand geography. That's a key problem. If you're unemployed in Newcastle, how does it help you if there are job vacancies in London? That's a problem. What if you don't have the right expertise to fill those job roles? As we've mentioned before, the UK's educational system is a joke, especially for vocational skills, for trade skills. It's rubbish. It doesn't matter if you've got the people to fill up the roles. You need the expertise. That's just as important. Businesses want people with experience. That's another thing. Just because you have numbers doesn't mean anything. Genuinely just baffles me.
Model, right? Because the OBR is still saying that in trade terms, productivity is 4% lower than if the UK had remained in the EU. Trade intensity reduced by 15% over a 10-year period. Your budget hasn't shifted that. That is the OBR's comment this morning. I mean, your number 2 was asked yesterday on Newsnight, my old stomping ground, if people had voted to make themselves poorer. He didn't deny it. Are you saying, yes, that was the choice that people made and we are going to be poorer and we've just got to get on with that?
Well, here's the truth about Brexit.
The way he sits is really weird as well.
It was a choice we made, and whether we make a success of Brexit or not is also a choice that we have to make. There's no automatic success when you make a big change like that to your trading relations with your nearest neighbours.
I thought Brexit was going to be easy. It was going to be inherently success. That's what David Davis told us. getting a trade deal with the EU, easiest trade deal. Other Brexiteers said we could do it over a cup of tea. It'd be great. We can keep access to the single market and do trade agreements with the rest of the world. This is absolute nonsense what he's saying right now. He's moved the goalpost. Well, the Brexiteers have moved the goalpost, but he's one of them now.
Now, yesterday, I set out a plan which is not just for the next 2 to 3 years, it's a plan for the next 20 years. It's a plan as to how we can change our approach to work so that we are not dependent on the labour that we were able to access when we were in the EU. And I think it was a pretty thorough plan.
Realistically, then, we have to wait 20 years. Is that right, to see the positive effects of Brexit? That is broadly where we're heading.
No.
I mean, it's better than the 50 years that Mark was talking about.
If we want to be one of the most prosperous countries in the world, if we want to have an economic transformation in the way that they had in Singapore or Taiwan or many other countries.
Okay, let's look at Singapore. Singapore, a city-state, which is, you have, not a ton of people, not compared to the UK anyways. Singapore made, I think, a lot of its money as a trading hub, but also through low regulations, right? Taiwan, I think, makes most of their money through manufacturing. They are an absolute manufacturing powerhouse. The UK is not going to become either one of those two. So by citing Singapore and Taiwan, it makes no sense. The amount of things that Taiwan produces, like computer chips, for example, it's madness. The scale, the efficiencies, something Gamers Nexus talks about. But the UK is not going to become like that. It's not going to be like Singapore or Taiwan. So citing them makes no sense.
Then yes, that is a 20-year project. What did I talk about? I talked about how we can become Europe's Silicon Valley. That's a big dream. I don't say this is something that we're going to achieve overnight.
Because
nor do I say, by the way, nor do I say it's necessarily something that we're going to achieve when I'm Chancellor. But look at what's happened in the last decade.
Right.
We have now got the third largest technology sector in the world after America and China.
We did that whilst we were members of the EU, and we could no doubt recruit experts from around the EU to work in various different UK kind of fintech companies and other such companies.
Europe's biggest life sciences industry, Europe's biggest film.
We were always very advanced when it comes to life science. We did very well with life sciences. In terms of biggest film, that's probably partially down to the fact that everyone in Europe speaks English as the second language for the most part, and some people's second language, English as a second language, is better than my English, I'll be honest. Point being is that that's one of the reasons why I think we have one of the biggest, the biggest film industry in Europe. It's because of the second language thing. People in England typically don't really speak a second language.
And TV industry, Europe's second largest renewable.
And also, certain people hate subtitles. The worst people. They're the reasons why we can't get good foreign films on TV stations and on Netflix, because they refuse to watch them. Read subtitles, people.
Industry. The industries of the future that are going to shape this century, we do well in. That's our opportunity.
You've taken us on to technology, and I'm not going to deny anything there, but we have...
the thing is, life sciences with things like cinema and, kind of cultural, kind of theatre stuff, the world's always been big on that. It's always generated loads of money. It's not going to be they're not going to be the industries of the future. They're the industries of the now. They're the industries of the past. Not much has changed in that regard.
Got a lower level of productivity by 4%, according to the OBR. Rishi Sunak told the people of Northern Ireland, when he was setting out the Windsor framework, they had the most exciting economic zone, unique and privileged position. It was the prize. He let the cat out of the bag. He admitted what we all knew, that we have been denied that. I'm wondering if the government just has to admit that to the people of the whole UK.
And in my opinion, they do. And what he does is he offers a load of filler here. He kind of tries to kind of argue that they're a bit of Ramonas and all of this kind of stuff. Talks about running a marathon, etc. I think he's trying to buy himself time to think of an answer. And what Rishi Sunak said was, it's great that Northern Ireland has access to the Great British market and the EU single market, whilst when we were members of the EU, we also had access to the EU single market. It don't make sense.
We ask the questions that our listeners and our viewers really ask us about.
I understand that, so and I'm here because I'm happy to engage with you.
Yeah, go on.
But what I would say is that going forward, it's about the choices we make. And what I was doing yesterday was putting in place a framework that gives us the chance to be extremely prosperous outside the EU, as I believe we can be. Now, you say, you talk about the position of Northern Ireland. Of course, I think, if I may say, that was a misrepresentation of what.
It wasn't. It wasn't a misrepresentation. It talked about the benefits of Northern Ireland that no one else in the world is in the position that Northern Ireland's in, that it can export to GB with no checks and the EU with no checks. That's big, because the checks, the customs fees, the standards checks, those are all expensive. They add a lot of cost to exports and make countries looking to import your goods prohibitive. So she didn't misrepresent anything what Rishi Sunak said, not really in my opinion. So what Jeremy Hunt is doing is trying to play the person, not the ball, once again. I think it's the third time this interview he's done that.
What Rishi Sunak was saying, because of course
he said it.
Yes, he did. But what he was saying is, we recognise
it's fantastic to be in a single market, and to be trading in the UK.
Yes, and what he was recognising was that because of history, because of the Good Friday Agreement and so on, the way we treat Northern Ireland is different. Northern Ireland has different options. They have the benefit of being in two single markets, if you like, the European single market and the United Kingdom internal market. That's not a choice that's open to everyone else. That's because both the UK and the EU recognise that this is a special situation and we all have a responsibility to uphold the Good Friday Agreement.
But the thing is, everyone had access to that before we left the EU. And, if that's the case, then surely Rishi Sunak shouldn't be talking up the economic benefits. He should be saying, look, because of the Good Friday Agreement, it means there can't be a hard border here. So that means you're part of the EU single market as well. Instead, he's pushing the economic benefits, saying only you are in this area where you can effectively export to, the huge market that is the EU and Great Britain. So it wouldn't really make sense for him to kind of use these economic arguments, especially if they are untrue. Jeremy Hunt didn't say these arguments are untrue. He just said that the other parts of the union don't have access to the single market because they're not geographically attached to an EU member state. The arguments he makes here really don't make any sense. And the best he can come up with is an 11p cut to real ale. And he's saying, that's what pubs really want, just a small little cut, when they can't get staff, struggling with imports, struggling for goods. In terms of getting food, because pubs sell a lot of food, they're struggling with that because UK agriculture is doing really badly for a lack of staff, partially caused by the lack of kind of agricultural workers that we typically got from the EU. These are some of the most ridiculous statements I have seen from a so-called Remainer, a former Remainer, I should say. And he was struggling a bit in this interview. I think Emily Matlis and John Sopel could have done a much, much better job here, especially compared to the Victoria Derbyshire interview with Newsnight, which we'll talk about soon. But just an absolute joke. Just an absolute joke from Jeremy Hunt, saying, I've always believed that we could be a strong independent country and all this nonsense. Why did you vote Remain then? That's what I would have asked him. Why did you vote Remain in 2016? And what has suddenly changed your mind? But then again, he was also the same guy who compared the EU to the Soviet Union. So, the guy's clearly not all there. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.